Incrementality is the new gold standard in measurements, and much more about the same movement of the industry towards a more privacy-centric model, implications and challenges of the new world order for measurement, and of course, is it a good bet for new future? It is important to understand the incremental lift in revenue achieved from your marketing campaigns and why much more on the same. Let's get straight into a quick conversation here. And firstly, welcoming our speaker with Prakash Yadav, Head of Growth and Marketing, Khatabook. And joining him in conversation is Manuel Oothria, who's Director of Sales for one of our partner, AppsFlyer India. Manuel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Miten. Really happy to be here and to have this great session with Ved. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Manuel, and I lead the business for AppsFlyer in India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Super excited to have with Prakash Yadav, who is the Growth and Marketing Head at Khatabook today. And as Miten mentioned, the topic for today is incrementality is the new gold standard in measurement. Now, what does incrementality mean is nothing but a measure of lift that can be attributed to any marketing campaign. That being said, in layman's word, it's nothing but A/B testing, right? Which works on a control plus of exposed mechanism where a certain portion of people are not exposed to your communication or a marketing campaign, where there are other two test groups that is created who are exposed to your marketing campaigns. And at the end of 15th day or 30th day, you go and see what is the incrementality or the increment or the lift that you see with people who have seen your ad compared to who have not seen your ad. So that's to give you kind of a very high level overview about incrementality. With that being said, let's dive into some of the interesting questions that I have for Ved. Good afternoon, Ved. Glad to have you here. And with a bit of a context that we've seen in 2021, in the latest report that we've seen from data.ai, which speaks about almost 800K apps being downloaded per minute and almost close to 5 hours being spent on the mobile apps in a day per person user. Why do you think incrementality is the key for growth?
Yeah, I think glad to be part of this chat, Manuel, first of all. I think in being able to create a incremental attribution after one point is critical as you look at the growth. In the initial days when, let's say till around 1,000 users that you acquire, it's fine having a linear attribution model. The moment your growth goes into a few hundred Ks or few million users, idea is like for any campaign, they will have a linear touch points to the user. There will be a linear impact in terms of the growth, but also each one of the touch points will affect every other campaign. So I think that's where like it becomes very, very critical. In the initial days of growth at Khatabook, again, we use linear model, but then as you were suggesting, like creating test and control, running those experiments for each one of the channels to understand what incremental impact does each campaign or channel have in the overall scenario becomes very critical. I don't see growth happening in effective, cost-effective manner without having incremental attribution model being created by the teams.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ved. The same report also stated that the finance app downloads in India specifically surpassed 1 billion downloads in 2021. Globally, it is over 5 billion. So which means 20% of the downloads happen from India with 28% year-on-year growth. That being said, why do you think incrementality is a good bet for the near future and the importance to understand incremental lift in every campaign that the team runs at Khatabook?
Sure. I think to put things in perspective, let me take an example of BizAnalyst, like which is one of the app where, which is a paid app, you get a 7-day free trial. So what happens is like there are multiple touch points from people being acquired offline, people being acquired through telesales, a lot of lead generation digitally, and app install campaigns that we run. Now, spread across all these digital points, it's very difficult to be able to attribute a single subscription to any one of these. So we have to create experiments to see like what is the incremental impact of a particular campaign, maybe a telesales call, maybe an offline touch point, So not only it is a idea for digital distribution, but as your touch points are increasing offline as well as online, it becomes more and more critical. And then as the traditional businesses are moving towards digitization, it will become more and more critical for them to understand the incremental impact of the touch points for any growth that they're doing. So not only, and then in terms of touch points, like as we were mentioning, like once let's say user have submitted the lead form, we push them through Tally Sales for them to download the app and then start a free trial. And during the free trial, which is a 7-day window, we run multiple campaigns, product engagement campaign, remarketing campaigns, to make them understand more about the product, to help them go through the whole onboarding process, to be able to understand like what activity is influencing what part of their decision making, because it's sum of all these influences around all the touch points that they go through is what will result into a paid subscription at the end of the day.
Very interesting point that you made, Ved. I mean, when you run these kind of an incrementality campaigns, you have to go with that experimentation mindset, right? Sometimes you might see increments, sometimes you may not see. What's your experience been? Have you been successful in all your remarketing campaigns where you've seen increments? And if not, how did you go about it?
So I think it worked both ways. Like we were able to figure out few campaigns where there was a very high incremental impact of those. So we were able to scale those up. And there were few campaigns which didn't work that well, had zero uplift. But because of the quantum of effort that we were putting in, our hypothesis or assumption was that they're creating an impact. But by doing it in an experimental format, we were able to understand them. And once we understood, we stopped and then realigned and focused a lot more on the campaigns which has higher impact.
Got it. Thank you. One of the interesting facts that we found in our recent State of App Marketing report, which mentioned that 63% there's been an improvement when you do in day 30 retention or D3 retention when you do remarketing. With that being said, how do you go about retaining and re-engaging with your users? What are some of the best practices, and would you like to share them?
Sure. I think what we've seen is like in our journey last 1.5 years, there's the normal dormancy which kicks in. Other than that, like because of COVID, we saw a bit more excessive dormancy during the first and second lockdown, given that the major impact was happening on small businesses in the market. And those being the core users that we have across the geography. So a lot of disruption happened and usage of the app dropped off during the first and second lockdown to around 15 to 20%. Idea was to be able to reach out to these users. So we did create few product features and all to help those folks. But in terms of marketing and engagement, what we were able to do was categorize these users based on geography, based on size of the business, nature of their activity earlier, and then run these experiments to see like which campaigns work well. So what are the options that we had at that time, being able to reach out to them through maybe a notification, through SMS, through remarketing campaigns on Google and Facebook, and various other players. So we created those metrics in 3 to 4 months. We were able to bring these users back to the level of pre-lockdown. Other than that, like for the normal scenario of day 30 dormancy that we look at, so we created a churn model to understand like which are the users for whom the probability of getting dormant is very high. So there are few proactive measures that we take in terms of being able to engage them through notification, maybe more excessive educational onboarding in the initial journey, in the initial 7 days particularly. So there are proactive measures that we're able to take through product engagement and a bit of remarketing. And once, let's say, we know that high probability that people are already dormant, we engage them through remarketing campaigns, which is primarily like Google, Facebook remarketing campaigns. They are like, again, in the same way, we have created campaigns and experimental structures to understand like how much incremental impact that people have, because all of this is based on prediction. So having a linear attribution is almost impossible. We have to again bank upon the incremental impact of these campaigns on the top of retention that we are able to drive.
Sure. It's a very interesting note to be said. As much as we all go ahead and acquire new users, and we spoke about 5 crore app installs that happened with Khatabook in a very short span. It is also very imperative and important to focus upon the leaky bucket, right? How do we avoid churn and how do we avoid leaky bucket? And the recent study again says that 57% of uninstalls happen within the first day. With that being said, I wanted to understand from your perspective at Khatabook, what are some of the insights that you could share and best practices that you have used to avoid and to solve for the leaky bucket?
Sure. So I think there are two, three parts to how we look at it internally. One, like we run deep funnel campaigns. Like we don't optimize the acquisition campaigns for let's say login, sign up, or installs. We figure out a metric on day one metric, which results into which helps us in predicting the long term behavior of the user, day 30 or day 90 retention, which is like X number of transactions being done by users on day one. So we continuously optimize all our campaigns based on that. So that really takes care of a lot of churn and the efficiency of how good the customers that you're able to target and get. But once customer, let's say, comes on board, initial 3 to 7 days are very, very critical in terms of onboarding. So some role is being played by the product team, like in terms of while onboarding, but a lot of nudges through product engagement goes through in increasing that uplift, reducing the dormancy in the initial 3 days. So what we have been able to do is in last 2 years, our retention have increased by almost like 5 to 6% points on an absolute scale, primarily because of the onboarding initial 7 days activity through product engagement, which is what I talked about while addressing the last question in terms of proactive measures that we have been able to take after predicting who are the possible users who may become dormant in the initial 10 days. Then after that, like being able to, given the category, given the nature of the businesses, like these people, the target users that we have come online in the last 3-4 years. So they also struggles to understand the utility of the app and all. Till now, they've used it for more entertainment or basic conversations. To be able to use the mobile phone for utility opens up a lot of avenues for them to generate efficiency in their daily lives while they run the business. So I think being able to help them in that transition is what we look at in terms of content and engagement in the initial 7 to 10 days. And that has helped us in increasing the overall retention by a few percent points.
Did you mean to say, did you guide them, give them a little bit of content, did some exercise on that piece?
Yes. And they're also like, because like it's not a very linear thing where more content doesn't mean better onboarding, more touch points or nudge doesn't mean better onboarding. So a lot of experimentation in terms of what is influencing what behavior. We've been able to reach to some understanding in terms of what works with these users. We support 13 languages, so there's a variance in terms of market to market, size of the business, the devices also, like if people are using premium devices, we know that they're well aware their journey is a different kind as compared to people who have a very entry-level phone, maybe using the mobile device for the first time. So yeah, those segments and cohorts we have been able to create, and that has helped us in running these experiments and building understanding in a better way.
Thank you very much, Ved. Just to sum it up, we spoke about how important it is when you're at a smaller stage of growth, the lead and attribution will work. But as you grow up, you definitely need incrementality. You need to have these kind of models to test it out. The second point that you mentioned was to go with the experimentation mindset, right? Irrespective of whether the end result is good or it is not, definitely you have immense amount of learning. And the third piece is, build those cohorts, build those different, avenues of engage with them. And finally, you spoke about how do you go about ensuring that the onboarding is seamless, give as much as content and nudges to ensure the users retain with you. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure having you and speaking to you, Ved. Looking forward to catching up with you in person.
Sure. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Ved. Thank you indeed. That was a very interesting session and of course, so much to learn from. Thank you again. Well, now we are moving on to our last and final session of this day, and that's coming on the other side. Stick with us.